I gave my whole life to my children. But the day my son screamed at me in public, I realized love in silence was destroying us all. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Maria's modest kitchen. Dust floated in the rays of light, glowing like tiny stars, and the aroma of strong tea filled the air. Maria stirred the pot absent-mindedly, her mind wandering far away from the bubbling kettle. She had woken at dawn, as she had every day for the last 30 years. Her body trained to rise before the rest of the world. At 58, her back ached when she bent, her knees crackled when she climbed stairs, and her hands bore the scars of endless years of housework and labor. Yet she moved quietly, gracefully, as if her suffering had no right to disturb the peace of her family's home. She set the table with care. 3 plates, neatly folded napkins, fresh bread bought late the previous evening. She had skipped dinner herself, saving the last piece of chicken for her youngest son, Daniel. It wasn't unusual. In fact, Maria had made sacrifices so routinely that she no longer recognized them as sacrifices. They were simply life. Her late husband, Robert, had once called her the quiet backbone of the family, but Robert had been gone for nearly 10 years now, and without his voice reminding the children of their mother's strength, Maria had slowly turned invisible. "Mom!" A sharp voice jolted her from her thoughts. It was her eldest daughter, Anna, coming down the stairs in a rush, high heels clacking against the wood. Anna was 32 now, a successful marketing executive, always dressed sharply, always in control. Or at least that's what she wanted the world to believe. "You ironed my blouse, right? The blue one?" Anna didn't even glance at her mother as she poured herself coffee. Maria nodded softly. "It's hanging in your closet, dear. I pressed it last night." "Good. I have a presentation today. Don't let Daniel touch it. He always leaves crumbs on everything." Anna sat at the table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't thank her mother, not anymore. Gratitude had turned into expectation long ago. Moments later, Daniel stumbled in, rubbing his eyes. At 23, he was still living at home, drifting between part-time jobs and half-hearted college courses. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled. "Morning," he muttered, dropping into the chair opposite his sister. "Morning, sweetheart," Maria said, sliding the warm bread basket closer to him. "Eat something before you go." Daniel grunted, grabbing a piece and chewing without looking up. Anna wrinkled her nose. "You're such a mess, Danny. No wonder you can't keep a job." "Shut up," Daniel shot back. "Enough," Maria whispered, though her voice held no power. They never listened when she tried to make peace. Her youngest, Lily, was still asleep upstairs. At only 16, Lily was Maria's last reminder of innocence, the only one who still occasionally slipped into bed beside her mother on stormy nights, whispering secrets. But Maria knew even Lily would grow, and like her siblings, drift further away. As breakfast continued in silence, Maria thought back to the early years, the long nights Robert worked at the factory, the extra cleaning jobs she had taken just to afford Anna's ballet classes. She remembered how she had sold her grandmother's locket to pay Daniel's hospital bills when he was 8, and how she had skipped meals during Robert's illness so her children wouldn't go hungry. Every wrinkle on her face, every ache in her bones was a story of sacrifice. Yet none of those stories had ever been told. "Mom, I need some cash." Daniel's voice snapped her back. He was scrolling on his phone now, not even meeting her eyes. "Just $50. I'll pay you back." Maria hesitated. She had only $120 left in her purse until her next cleaning job. But Daniel was her son, and her instinct was to give. Always to give. She opened her purse silently and handed him the bills. Anna sighed. "You spoil him, Mom, that's why he's useless." Daniel glared. "Better useless than heartless." The tension crackled, and Maria shrank into herself, as she always did. She never fought back, never raised her voice. She believed her silence was love, but that silence was slowly killing her. That afternoon, Maria walked to the local market, clutching her worn bag. As she counted her coins for vegetables, she felt the sting of humiliation. She had once dreamed of opening a small bakery, her own business, her own identity. Robert had encouraged her, but between bills, school fees, and emergencies, the dream had been buried. Maria, a voice called. It was Mrs. Collins, a neighbor. Still working so hard? Don't your children help out? Maria forced a smile. They have their own lives. I manage. But inside, her heart ached. She returned home to find Anna furious. Daniel had borrowed her car without asking. They were screaming in the living room. Lily sat on the stairs, watching with wide eyes. Enough! Maria finally shouted, her voice trembling but louder than it had been in years. The room fell silent. I've given everything for this family. Everything. And this is how you treat each other? How you treat me? For a moment, they all stared at her as if she were a stranger. Then Anna laughed bitterly. Oh, please, Mom, don't make yourself the victim. You chose this life. Nobody asked you to sacrifice. The words hit like knives. Maria staggered back, her hand on her chest. For the first time, she wondered, had her sacrifices truly meant nothing? And just then, Daniel stormed back in, his voice loud enough for the neighbors outside to hear. You're always on Anna's side. You never believed in me. No wonder Dad died working himself to death, because you never stood up for him either. The words echoed through the house and Maria froze. Outside, passers-by stopped, staring at the shouting young man and the trembling older woman. The humiliation burned like fire in her chest, and among the strangers who had gathered, one pair of eyes lingered on her with unusual intensity. Maria stood frozen in the doorway, her chest rising and falling as her son's words echoed like thunder inside her. No wonder Dad died working himself to death, because you never stood up for him either. The pain of those words cut deeper than any knife. Robert had died of cancer, and Maria had been at his side for every appointment, every sleepless night, every agonizing moment. She had held his hand when the doctors delivered the final verdict. She had worked double shifts to pay for his medication, and she had cried silently into her pillow so the children wouldn't hear her breaking. And now her own son had rewritten that history in a moment of anger. The neighbors whispered outside the fence. Some shook their heads with pity. Others simply walked away, uninterested in an old woman's humiliation. But one man didn't move. He was tall, with a weathered face and kind eyes that seemed out of place in the crowd. His clothes suggested he worked with his hands, maybe at the nearby construction site. He didn't gawk like the others. Instead, his gaze lingered on Maria, as if he recognized something in her that others ignored. When Maria's eyes briefly met his, he gave her the smallest nod, silent, respectful, before turning away. Maria closed the door quickly, her knees trembling. Lily rushed down the stairs and hugged her tightly. Mom, don't listen to them, the girl whispered. Don't listen to Anna or Daniel. They don't know what they're saying. Maria stroked her daughter's hair, forcing a smile she didn't feel. It's all right, sweetheart. They're just angry. But inside, her heart bled. That evening, Maria sat alone in the kitchen. The dishes from dinner were piled in the sink. Anna had left for her presentation. Daniel had stormed out with his friends, and Lily had retreated to her room. Maria could have called them back, demanded they help, but she didn't. She washed every plate, every fork, every glass, her hands moving automatically. As the warm water soaked her hands, memories of Robert returned. He had been her balance, the one who told the children, respect your mother. She's the reason you have everything you do. Without him, Maria had become a background shadow, a silent provider, someone the children leaned on but never saw. When the last dish was dried, she sat at the table with a notebook. It was the same notebook she had once used to sketch designs for her dream bakery, recipes, logos, plans. She flipped through the faded pages inside. Those dreams felt like they belonged to another woman, someone younger, someone who still believed she was allowed to want things. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door creaking open. She stiffened, expecting Daniel's loud footsteps, but instead, she heard a softer tread. Curious, she peeked around the corner. It was the man from earlier, the stranger who had lingered outside during the shouting. He was standing on the porch, hat in hand, as if debating whether to knock. Maria opened the door a crack. Yes? He looked startled, then cleared his throat. I'm sorry for intruding. My name's Thomas. I work at the construction site down the road. I didn't mean to pry earlier, but... He hesitated, then continued. I couldn't walk away without saying, you don't deserve to be spoken to like that. Maria's breath caught. She glanced behind her to make sure the children weren't around, then stepped outside, pulling the door shut. "You shouldn't involve yourself," she said softly. "Family matters are complicated," Thomas nodded. "I know, but I've seen too many good people buried under silence. Sometimes all it takes is one voice to remind you you're not invisible." Maria blinked back unexpected tears. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers. She wasn't used to kindness at all. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her a gentle smile and tipped his hat. "Good night, ma'am." As he walked away, Maria stood in the porch light, her heart heavy yet oddly warmed. For the first time in years, someone had seen her. Not as a servant, not as a background figure, but as a human being. Later that night, she sat by Lily's bed, watching her daughter sleep. The girl's face was peaceful, untouched by the harshness of the world. Maria brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "I won't let you grow up to forget me." But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. Had she already lost Anna and Daniel? Was it too late? The next morning, Maria rose before dawn again. She packed Anna's lunch, ironed Daniel's shirt, and left breakfast ready on the table. But as she tied her worn apron, she felt something stirring inside her, a small spark, fragile but real. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe silence was not the only way to love. Maybe, after all these years, she needed to find her voice. Her chance came sooner than expected. That afternoon, Anna returned home furious. "Mom, why didn't you remind me about the report I left on the table? I had to redo the entire thing during lunch." Maria looked at her daughter, her lips tightening. "Anna, you're 32 years old. You're responsible for your own work." Anna froze, startled. She opened her mouth to argue but found no words. It was the first time her mother had spoken back, ever. From the staircase, Daniel chuckled bitterly. "Finally! Mom's growing a spine." "Shut up, Daniel!" Maria snapped, her voice louder than intended. The room fell silent again. Daniel's smirk faded. Maria's hands trembled, but she didn't back down. She looked at both her children, her voice steady now. "I've spent my life giving everything to you. My food, my money, my health, my dreams, but no more. If you want respect, you'll give it back. If you want love, you'll show it. I'm done being invisible in my own home." Her words hung in the air, heavy and shocking. Anna stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, and from upstairs, Lily peeked out of her room, her eyes wide but shining with pride. For the first time in decades, Maria felt her silence crack open. Her voice was small, unsteady, but it was hers. And once a voice finds its way out, it never fully disappears again. Maria didn't sleep that night. Every word she had spoken replayed in her mind, sharp, trembling, yet undeniable. For years, she had hidden behind her silence, convincing herself it was for the sake of peace. But peace had never come, only resentment, disrespect, and a loneliness that cut deeper than any argument ever could. Now the air in the house was different. Anna barely spoke to her, moving stiffly around the kitchen as if Maria were a stranger. Daniel avoided eye contact, his usual arrogance subdued. Lily, however, followed her mother with quiet admiration, her eyes glowing with something Maria hadn't seen in years: pride. At breakfast, Maria set the plates down without a word. Anna reached for the toast, her movements deliberate, while Daniel tapped at his phone. "Mom," Lily whispered. "Can I sit next to you today?" Maria smiled faintly and nodded. It was a small thing, but when Lily nestled close to her, Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. Maybe it wasn't too late after all. Not if she held on to at least one of her children. Halfway through the meal, Anna slammed her fork down. "I can't believe you embarrassed me like that yesterday." Maria looked up, her voice calm but steady. "I didn't embarrass you, Anna. I told you the truth." "The truth?" Anna's eyes flashed. "The truth is you don't know what I go through at work. I'm fighting for respect every day, and you..." She gestured wildly. "You've never fought for anything!" Daniel snorted, muttering under his breath. "That's the only true thing you've said." The silence that followed was suffocating. Maria's hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to scream. Do you think raising 3 children alone isn't a fight? Do you think giving up every dream I had wasn't a war I fought every single day? But the words caught in her throat, heavy and unspeakable. Instead, she whispered, "You'll understand one day." Anna rolled her eyes and stood, grabbing her bag. Maybe, but by then, it'll be too late. She stormed out, leaving the door rattling behind her. Daniel rose next, stretching lazily. Don't take it personally, Mom. You're just old-fashioned. Nobody respects that anymore. He slipped his phone into his pocket and left without finishing his breakfast. Maria sat in the silence that followed, her heart aching. Lily squeezed her hand. Mom, I respect you. I always will. Tears stung Maria's eyes, but she forced a smile. That's enough for me, sweetheart. For now. That afternoon, Maria returned to the small bakery where she worked part-time. It wasn't glamorous. She cleaned tables, washed dishes, sometimes helped with the register. But she cherished the warm smell of bread, the chatter of customers, the clinking of teacups. It was a place that reminded her she was more than just a servant in her own home. As she tied her apron, her boss, Mrs. Patel, patted her arm. Maria, you look tired. Are the children giving you trouble again? Maria hesitated, then chuckled softly. When aren't they? Mrs. Patel's eyes softened. You're stronger than you think. Don't let them forget that. The words warmed Maria, but they also unsettled her. Strong? She had never thought of herself as strong. She had only thought of herself as necessary. As the day wore on, Thomas, the stranger from the construction site, walked in. His boots were dusty, and he carried the weariness of long hours. He ordered a coffee, then spotted Maria wiping down a nearby table. Afternoon, he greeted, his voice gentle. Maria nodded politely. Afternoon, he hesitated, then asked, Rough morning? Maria froze. She hadn't spoken of her family troubles to anyone outside, yet something in his tone made her feel exposed. Still, she shook her head. Just the usual. Thomas studied her quietly. The usual can still hurt. For a moment, Maria wanted to tell him everything, to unload years of swallowed pain onto someone who might actually listen. But instead, she forced a smile and returned to her work. When he left, he dropped a few extra coins into the tip jar and said, For the woman who works harder than anyone gives her credit for. Maria stood frozen as he walked out, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. That evening, back home, the storm brewed again. Anna had discovered that her colleague had taken credit for her presentation idea. She slammed her bag onto the couch and raged about betrayal and injustice. Maria listened quietly until Anna snapped, Don't just sit there. Say something useful for once. Maria's lips parted. Her heart hammered. Anna, she said slowly, what happened to you at work today is what's been happening to me for 30 years. Anna blinked, caught off guard. What are you talking about? You work hard, but others take credit. You sacrifice, but they don't notice. You fight, but they pretend you're invisible. That's my life, Anna, every day. For you, for Daniel, for Lily. The room fell silent. Daniel, lounging in the corner, shifted uneasily. Anna's face softened, but only for a second. Then she shook her head. That's different. You chose that life. Maria's voice trembled. Yes, I chose to love you. I chose to give up my dreams so you could chase yours. But don't tell me that means I've never fought. Don't erase me like that. Her words hung in the air, raw and unpolished. Anna looked away, muttering, I don't want to talk about this. She fled upstairs. Daniel avoided Maria's gaze. For once, he didn't have a clever remark. He simply walked out, leaving the door ajar. Only Lily remained. She hugged her mother tightly. Mom, I heard everything. You were amazing. Maria held her daughter close, tears spilling freely now. I don't feel amazing. I feel tired. Lily shook her head. But you're strong. Stronger than all of us. For the first time, Maria let herself believe it might be true. The next few days in the household carried a tension Maria could almost touch. Conversations were clipped, footsteps heavy. and the once lively room seemed to echo with unspoken words. Maria felt as if she were walking a tightrope. Her newfound voice had cracked the shell of silence, but the ground beneath her family was still unstable. Anna avoided her whenever possible. Daniel remained sarcastic, though quieter than before. Only Lily seemed to grow closer, shadowing her mother in small ways, helping fold laundry, brewing tea, even humming beside her as Maria chopped vegetables. These simple gestures were enough to keep Maria from slipping back into despair. One afternoon, Maria stood by the window, watching the autumn leaves scatter in the wind. Daniel's voice drifted from the living room. "Mom, I need some money for the football trip next week." Maria turned slowly. "Daniel, you're 20. You work part-time. You should save for things like that." He frowned. "I don't make enough. Besides, it's just a little money." Maria folded her arms. "I've been giving you just a little money for years. It's time you learned how to manage your own." His face darkened. "So that's it? You're cutting me off? After everything I've done for this family?" Her eyebrows lifted. "And what exactly have you done, Daniel?" The words escaped before she could soften them. The silence that followed was sharp, jagged. Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Forget it. I'll ask someone who actually cares." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Maria sank into her chair, her heart heavy. She hadn't meant to wound him so deeply, but perhaps it was time her children realized she wasn't an endless well of sacrifice. Later that evening, as Maria swept the kitchen floor, a gentle knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Thomas, the man from the construction site, holding a small paper bag. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, shifting awkwardly. "The bakery had extra rolls today. Thought you might like some." Maria hesitated, then accepted the bag with a soft smile. "Thank you. That's very kind," he nodded. "I remember what it's like, raising kids who forget how much you've done for them. My mother went through the same. I wasn't much better than your boy at that age." Maria blinked. "And now?" Thomas chuckled, the sound tinged with regret. "Now I'd give anything to tell her how much she meant to me. But she's gone. Took me too long to find my voice." His words pierced Maria's heart. She thought of Daniel, of Anna, of the years slipping by. Would her children only recognize her worth when it was too late? Thomas seemed to read her silence. "Don't give up on them. They see more than they admit." Maria lowered her gaze, tears threatening. "I don't know how much longer I can keep hoping." Thomas gave a small, reassuring smile. "Hope's stubborn. It stays even when you think it's gone." He tipped his hat and left, leaving Maria with the warm bag of rolls and a swirl of emotions. That night, Maria lay awake, listening to the creaks of the old house. Anna's soft footsteps echoed upstairs. Daniel's muffled music vibrated faintly through the walls, and Lily's even breathing reassured her from the next room. Maria whispered into the darkness, "Robert, am I doing this right? Would you have been stronger, better?" The silence answered, as it always did. She remembered how Robert used to squeeze her hand whenever the children acted out. "Let them learn," he'd whisper. "Our job is to love them anyway." But love, Maria realized, had to be more than silent endurance. Love had to have a voice, too. The next morning, Maria decided to take a small step for herself. Instead of rushing straight into chores after work, she stopped by the local library. It had been years since she'd walked those quiet aisles. The smell of books brought back a version of herself she'd buried long ago. A woman who used to dream, who used to write recipes and stories in her notebook. She borrowed a few cookbooks, telling herself they were for trying new meals, though in her heart, she knew they were seeds of something more. When she returned home, Lily greeted her at the door. "Mom, you look happy. What happened?" Maria smiled, holding up the books. "I just remembered that I'm allowed to like things too." Lily grinned. "You should do that more often." Anna, who was walking down the stairs, rolled her eyes. "Great. So now you're spending time on hobbies instead of actually helping us." The sting was immediate, but Maria steadied her breath. "Anna, I've helped you for 32 years. Taking 1 hour for myself won't undo that." Anna opened her mouth, then closed it again, her expression unreadable. She turned away without a word. Lily squeezed Maria's hand and whispered, Don't listen to her. She doesn't mean it. Maria exhaled, a shaky smile tugging at her lips. Maybe one day she'll realize that. That evening, Daniel came home late, reeking of alcohol. He stumbled into the kitchen, his words slurred. "Mom, why are you making my life so hard? Just give me what I need." Maria's heart clenched. She guided him to a chair, her voice firm. "Daniel, listen to me. Drinking won't fix anything, and I won't give you money to destroy yourself." He groaned, resting his head on the table. "You don't understand. Nobody does." Maria stroked his hair gently, her anger melting into sorrow. "Then help me understand. Talk to me, Daniel." But he was already asleep, his breathing heavy. Maria sat beside him, tears streaming silently. She wanted to hold on, to believe her son could still be saved, but doubt gnawed at her. By the time dawn broke, Maria had made a quiet decision. She would no longer let her children's disrespect define her worth. She would still love them, still support them, but not at the cost of erasing herself. As she tied her apron for work, she whispered to her reflection, "I am still here, and I won't be silent anymore." The morning after Daniel's drunken return, Maria braced herself for the fallout. She knew her son would wake up with little memory of the night before, but she couldn't shake the image of him slumped over the table, his words tangled in pain. It had been years since she had seen him that vulnerable, and it stirred something fierce inside her, a mix of sorrow and determination. At breakfast, Lily buttered toast quietly, sneaking worried glances at her brother's empty chair. Anna scrolled through her phone, sipping coffee without a word. "Daniel won't be joining us," Maria said finally, breaking the silence. "He's sleeping off a rough night," Anna smirked. "Shocking. And I suppose you'll cover for him, like always." Maria straightened. "Not this time." Anna's eyes lifted, surprised. "Oh?" Maria met her daughter's gaze with steady calm. "Daniel has to face the consequences of his choices. He's old enough to know better." Anna scoffed. "Good luck with that. You raised him to believe he's untouchable." The jab cut deep, but Maria refused to flinch. "And I'm trying to change that. For his sake, and for mine." Anna shook her head, muttering under her breath, "Too little, too late." Lily reached across the table, squeezing her mother's hand. "It's not too late, Mom. You're doing the right thing." Maria's throat tightened. Of all her children, Lily's quiet loyalty gave her the courage she desperately needed. Later that day, Maria returned from work to find Daniel sitting on the front porch, his head in his hands. His hair was unkempt, his eyes red-rimmed. "Rough morning?" she asked gently, setting her bag down. He groaned. "Don't start, Mom. I already feel like crap." Maria sat beside him, letting the silence linger. Finally, she said, "Daniel, you scared me last night." He rubbed his face. "I didn't mean to, I feel like I'm drowning and no one's throwing me a rope." Her heart clenched. "Then stop pushing away the only people who want to help you." He looked at her sharply. "Help? You mean control? You're always telling me what I should do, how I should live." Maria inhaled slowly. "Because I want better for you. I've worked myself to the bone to give you a chance at life, but you're wasting it, Daniel." His jaw tightened. "You don't get it. You never have." Maria reached out, her hand trembling as she touched his arm. "Then tell me. Help me understand." For a moment he softened. His shoulders sagged, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm scared, Mom. I don't know who I am without you holding everything together. And now that you're pulling back, I feel lost." Tears pricked Maria's eyes. "Daniel, I can't hold everything forever. You have to learn to stand. And I'll be here, cheering you on, but I can't carry you anymore." He swallowed hard, then pulled his arm away, retreating behind a mask of indifference. "We'll see." Maria let him go, knowing the battle wasn't over, but a small part of her believed he had heard her. That evening, Maria decided to take another small step for herself. She cooked dinner with one of the new recipes from her borrowed cookbooks, a creamy mushroom risotto. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and comforting. When she set the table, Anna raised an eyebrow. "What's this? Fancy food?" Maria smiled faintly. "Just something different. I thought we could all use a change." Daniel poked at his plate skeptically but took a bite. To Maria's surprise, his expression softened. "This is actually good," Lily grinned. "Told you Mom's amazing." Anna, however, rolled her eyes. "Don't get used to it. She'll probably burn out and go back to frozen dinners." The words stung, but Maria refused to let Anna steal her moment. "Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Either way, I'm allowed to try." For the first time in years, Maria ate slowly, savoring each bite instead of shoveling food in between chores. It felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. After dinner, Maria sat on the porch with Lily, watching the stars blink into existence. "Mom," Lily said softly, "do you ever regret it?" Maria glanced at her.
"Regret what?"
"Giving up so much, for us, for Anna and Daniel." Maria hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I don't regret loving my children. What I regret is forgetting to love myself too." Lily leaned against her shoulder. "I don't want you to forget anymore." Maria kissed her daughter's hair, whispering, "Me neither." The fragile peace shattered 2 days later. Maria was at the grocery store when she overheard 2 women whispering near the dairy section. "That's Daniel, right? Maria's boy?" "Yes. I heard he was kicked out of his friend's apartment for not paying rent." "Poor Maria. She deserves better after everything she's done." The words pierced Maria's chest. She forced herself to keep walking, her hands trembling as she clutched the cart. By the time she got home, her face was pale, her body drained. Daniel was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Daniel," she said quietly, "is it true? Were you kicked out?" His eyes flickered with guilt before hardening. "So what if I was?" "It's not like you care," Maria's voice broke. "I do care. I care more than you know. But you can't keep living like this, Daniel. You're breaking yourself, and me." He stood abruptly, his voice rising. "Stop acting like the victim. You made me this way. You babied me. Gave me everything. Never made me fight for anything. And now you're mad that I'm weak? That's on you, Mom." The words hit like a slap. Maria staggered back, tears filling her eyes. For the first time in her life, she raised her voice. "Enough. You don't get to blame me for your choices. I loved you the best way I knew how. Maybe I made mistakes, but you are a grown man now. You decide who you want to be." Daniel's mouth opened, then shut. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Both the cracks in her armor and the fire beneath. Without another word, he stormed out, the door rattling in its frame. Maria collapsed into a chair, shaking. Lily rushed to her side, wrapping her in a hug. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered. "You're stronger than he knows." Maria clung to her youngest, her heart pounding. She had crossed a line she could never uncross, but maybe it was the line she needed. That night, Maria lay awake, her mind replaying Daniel's accusation. "You made me this way." The words burrowed deep, gnawing at the fragile confidence she had been trying to build. Was he right? Had her sacrifices crippled him instead of strengthening him? She had always believed love meant shielding her children from pain, even if it meant burying her own. But what if her protection had smothered Daniel? What if, in giving him everything, she had taken away his chance to learn resilience? The thought was unbearable. Maria rose quietly, slipping out of bed and padding into the living room. The house was still, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. She sat in her favorite armchair, clutching the worn cushion like an anchor. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered into the silence. "Did I fail him, Lord? Did I fail them all?" The following morning, Maria forced herself through her routine, her body heavy with exhaustion. She cooked breakfast, though no one seemed hungry. She went to work, though her mind drifted constantly. At lunchtime, she found herself walking past a small community center. A flyer caught her eye. Support group for parents of troubled young adults. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Her first instinct was to keep walking. Talking to strangers about her private shame felt impossible. But something inside her, perhaps desperation, made her pause. She tore off one of the contact slips and tucked it into her purse. That evening, She sat at the kitchen table staring at the slip of paper. Anna walked in, rolling her eyes. "What's that? Another self-help thing?" Maria bristled. "It's a support group," Anna smirked. "For what? Moms who can't let go of their man-child sons?" The cruelness cut deep, but Maria steadied her voice. "For moms who are trying to do better." Anna opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she didn't have a snide remark. She simply grabbed a glass of water and left the room. Maria exhaled shakily. Maybe Anna didn't understand now, but maybe one day she would. On Wednesday night, Maria drove to the community center. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she parked. She almost turned back, but then she thought of Daniel's broken face, of Lily's quiet hope, of Anna's hidden bitterness. She walked inside. The room was small, filled with mismatched chairs arranged in a circle. A dozen people sat there, each with the same tired eyes she saw in her own reflection. A woman with kind features smiled. "Welcome, I'm Grace. Please join us." Maria sat, her pulse pounding. One by one, the parents shared their stories. Children lost to drugs, to anger, to hopelessness. Their voices cracked with grief, but also carried threads of resilience. When it was Maria's turn, her throat closed. She wanted to stay silent, to keep her shame buried. But something in the circle, the quiet acceptance, pushed her forward. "My name is Maria," she whispered. "My son, he's struggling, and I don't know how to help him anymore without losing myself." The words tumbled out like stones from her chest. She spoke of Daniel's anger, Anna's resentment, Lily's quiet support. She confessed her fear that her love had become a prison instead of a gift. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Grace leaned forward. "Maria, you are not alone. We've all carried that guilt. But love isn't about control or sacrifice. It's about presence. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do for your child is to step back and let them walk, even if they stumble." Maria's tears flowed freely. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. Over the next weeks, Maria continued attending the group. Each session chipped away at the wall of guilt she had built around herself. She learned to breathe through the shame, to accept that her worth wasn't measured by her children's choices. At home, subtle changes began to unfold. Maria set boundaries, small at first. She refused to clean up Daniel's mess when he left dishes scattered. She asked Anna to contribute to household bills if she wanted to stay. The resistance was fierce. Daniel exploded in anger. Anna accused her of being selfish. But Maria stood firm, even when her heart trembled. And Lily blossomed. For the first time, she saw her mother not as a martyr, but as a woman reclaiming her dignity. One evening, Lily surprised her with a drawing, a sketch of Maria standing tall, a soft halo of light around her. "It's how I see you, Mom," Lily said shyly. Maria held the drawing to her chest, tears filling her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. I needed this." But Daniel's spiral worsened. His drinking increased. His absences grew longer. Rumors of fights and unpaid debts reached Maria's ears. Each new whisper stabbed at her resolve, testing her strength. One night, at nearly midnight, the phone rang. Maria's stomach dropped as she answered. "Is this Maria?" a voice asked. "Yes." "This is Officer Jameson. Your son, Daniel, has been picked up for disorderly conduct. He's at the station. You can come get him." Maria closed her eyes, gripping the phone. Part of her wanted to rush to him, to cradle him like the boy he once was. But another part, the stronger part, knew this was his moment to face reality. "I'll be there," she said calmly. At the station, Daniel sat slumped in a chair, his eyes bloodshot. When he saw her, shame flickered across his face. "You didn't have to come," he muttered. Maria met his gaze. "Yes, I did. but this doesn't mean I'll save you from the consequences." For the first time, Daniel didn't argue. He just looked at her, his bravado crumbling. That night, as they drove home in silence, Maria felt something shift. She wasn't rescuing him anymore. She was standing beside him. Whether he rose or fell would be his choice. Back at the house, Daniel mumbled, "I'm sorry, Mom." Maria's heart ached, but she didn't rush to absolve him. Instead, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe you can do better, but you have to believe it too." He nodded faintly, and for the first time in years, Maria glimpsed a spark of the boy he once was. Months passed since Maria first stepped into that support group. What began as hesitant whispers had grown into a steady voice of strength inside her. She was no longer the mother who silently endured every insult, every burden, every disappointment. She had found her spine again, not to fight her children, but to stand beside them without losing herself. Daniel hit his lowest point one stormy night. He stumbled home drenched, his hands shaking, his eyes empty. "Mom," he said, his voice raw, "I can't keep doing this. I need help." Maria's heart clenched, but this time she didn't rush to fix him. She simply nodded and said, "Then tomorrow, we'll find that help together. But the first step must be yours." For the first time, Daniel didn't argue. He wept. Not like a grown man, but like the boy who once clung to her hand on his first day of school. Anna, watching from the hallway, felt something shift in her too. She had carried resentment for years, convinced that Maria loved Daniel more. But seeing her mother's steady strength, not enabling, not scolding, just standing, and cracked the shell of bitterness she had built. Late that night, Anna slipped into the kitchen where Maria sat sipping tea. "Mom," she whispered, "I used to think you were weak, but you're the strongest person I know." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She reached for Anna's hand. "Strength isn't about never breaking, sweetheart. It's about standing back up every time you do." Lily, quiet and observant as always, sketched the three of them together in her notebook. Her mother, her brother, her sister, not perfect, not healed completely, but connected again by threads of love. The family's journey wasn't magically solved overnight. Daniel entered counseling, stumbling more than once, but Maria let him face the consequences. Anna began helping more around the house, slowly softening her edges. Lily remained the gentle glue, her drawings capturing moments of fragile hope. Maria still sacrificed, but no longer silently. Now she spoke her truth. She set boundaries. She demanded respect. And in return, she discovered something she had never truly felt before: peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maria stood by the window, her children nearby. She whispered to herself, "All those years I thought my silence was love. But real love has a voice," and for the first time in decades she felt light. Not because her struggles were gone, but because she had finally learned that a mother's worth isn't measured by her pain. It's measured by her courage to rise. Silent sacrifices can hold a family together for a time, but true healing begins when silence breaks, when love speaks, and when dignity stands alongside devotion.